Okay, let's see the audience. Yep, call is there. More time is there. Let's give it a few more minutes. Let's start at 8:35. So let the audience join in.
Hey Shiv, how are you?
Hey Jay, you're audible.
Excellent.
I think Jay, we can start. We have enough attendees right now. We can start the session.
Excellent.
I think you can just give overview of what we have covered so far, and then we can start.
Perfect.
Perfect.
So guys, unfortunately there appears to be an issue with my camera, so unfortunately we can't get a view of me today. Shiv is working on it in the back end, and hopefully we get that up. All right. Now, last week what we looked at was a little bit about the support side of DevRev, and one, how to set up a custom org. Two, what would a typical solution be for support? And today we're going to start focusing on a bit more about the product team and a bit more about the product. And specifically, we're going to start to touch on some of the terminology that was discussed last week. So here are some of the terminology we're going to be looking at. Specifically, we're going to start to look at these predominantly. So I'm just going to give you a minute just to have a quick read over, make sure you're up to speed, you're remembering, and then we'll go from there. Excellent. So as we can see, we're going to be looking at trails, which is actually down the bottom. And trails, as you can see, it's a bit like the brains of the whole platform. And it's a hierarchical mind map, which is made of the parts. All right. So when we're talking about parts, in other platforms, you might know these as categories, and often tags are used. Within DevRev, though, we like to think of these different categorizations as these are parts, they belong in an area, they have parents, they might have children, object connections, and there's ownership and things like that. And what this can look like if we go to the demo org that we were using last week. Just quick show of hands that everybody can see my screen right now. Perfect. Thank you. So I'm actually going to go in the default org that we were looking at the other day, and we'll expand it out and then bring it to a more tangible example in another org. So what we can see here is that Trails, the first level is a product. And that is how we like to look at it. It's product level design in essence. And a product might be made of a few capabilities, might be made of one, it might be made of two. But basically, both of these capabilities are what powers this product to run. And I might use an analogy with cars for anyone who's more mechanically minded like that. I'm sorry, I am. Okay, but as we start to expand out, we can see that a capability might be built of one feature, or it might be built of many features. And within a feature itself, we might find there are sub-features. In this case, the default org, we do not. But you can see this concept of a runnable. Okay, so everything that we're looking at to the left of my mouse, all right, everything from the product all the way to a feature. These are like the parts of the product that the end users interface with. It might be the screens, it might be how they maneuver through the platform. All right. A runnable, though, is what we would call a developer part. Okay, so think of those microservices that power the whole platform. And in this way, we can really start to get an understanding of the platform or the product as a whole. All right. Now, if we want to look at any of these parts, we are going to get to see a little bit of a view. And there's a lot of information that we can actually show in here. So by default, we can see the type, who the owner is, any tags, who it was created by, when it was created, when it was modified. And if we're talking about the customization piece that we looked at last week, all of these parts can be modified too. So you can add additional fields. Maybe you have an engineering owner field. So you specifically know which engineer you need to talk to. But furthermore, we have descriptions. We can look at its like linking within the trail itself. And we can see that it is linked to, it is default feature 4. It is a child of default capability 2. And if I want to change that, I can. And I might change that to default feature 3, and I can link the parts. And now what we can see is that here we have a feature within a sub-feature. But it's going to keep all of that data associated with it. So if default feature 4 had 10 tickets, they would still be assigned to it. But it now is a child of default feature 3. And the nice thing about that is everything from the right will feed upstream. So if I look within default feature 3, we would see tickets that are assigned to default feature 4, as well as issues, as well as customers. And everything that's in default feature 3 will also roll up into default capability 1. All right. Now, some of the other things that we're seeing, though, is top contributors and top customers. Top customers is quite self-explanatory, but what is a top contributor? And a top contributor is just a developer. Okay, it's a developer who's working on an issue that is assigned within this part. Top customer is clear, as we said, but a top supporter, this is another internal employee, and it is simply a support agent who is working on a ticket, a support ticket within the part. So you can very quickly understand what is happening. Now, as we saw, we can move features. So I moved default feature 4 from capability 2, and it's keeping all of those links. And that is one of the benefits of the trails and the knowledge graph, which is what this is. You're able to understand what is happening within the platform and keep it contextual. You're able to understand which customers are using what parts of the platform. You're also able to understand which developers are working on it. You're able to understand which microservices are being used to make certain features or certain capabilities work. Now, what does this actually look like in a platform? I'm going to jump to Maple, which is the org that we were looking at last week. I'm going to look at this. So Trails. And here we can see that Maple actually has two products. One, we have the Maple software, which we can read about the description. What is this? And then we have Maple Corp, which has no description in this case. But if we quickly expand, we can see that Maple Corp is looking at the different teams within Maple. Okay, so you can start to use this to understand teams and understand load. Whereas if we look at Maple software, it has a different set of capabilities. You'll notice that in Maple software, we're not looking at support or DevOps or growth ops. We're simply looking at what are the capabilities that makes Maple software function. And as we sort of go through, we could look at, core. And we can see that the core capability is comprised of a few features: buy now, pay later, bank transfers, QR codes, UPIs. And these are all parts that last week during the support process, we could start to really categorize and understand. This is what is feeding the AI, and this is what the AI is using to recommend to the support agents that, hey, this is already in the system. Did you want to have a look at that? Do you need to create this new issue or this new support ticket? Because there is already someone working on it. As we can see, I can go one step further. And now when I look in bank transfer, there's this new object called an enhancement. And we're going to touch on this a lot later. But to put it simply, an enhancement is an object to enhance the platform. Just like a normal part, you have owners, but you can start to see we have stages. And to give you a contextual understanding of what is the closest related thing that you might be familiar with, an enhancement is similar to a Jira Epic, but it is different in a lot of the ways it functions. Again, we're going to touch on that a bit later when we get towards that enhancement and the roadmap and prioritization. But just know there is this part called an enhancement that is used. We can see description. Okay, so what is this enhancement looking at? The description, the objectives, the requirements. It's also an area we can assign docs, and you can see who are the contributors, who are the customers that are asking for it, any articles that you might want. You'll also notice on all of these objects, all of these parts, we have an events and discussions. So this is where you can go in and say, hey, what's the status? You can ask and it goes directly to the owner of the part. And it's also an area where you can look at the events. So what is happening? This might even alleviate myself needing to ask that question in discussion. I can see when it was created. I can see when it was linked. I can see when the target start date is and when the target close date is. Okay, so all of that information is tracked and we can really know without going and having to talk to different people. If I close this up and we can start to now look at runnables, so we can see that this core capability is being powered by all of these microservices, which makes sense based on the features we just saw. And if you look, very similar interface, but obviously we don't need as much information. We're not assigning customers to a developer part. Now we're just going to be looking at, well, who is working on it, any articles that might help us in deflection of the knowledge base, if there's any issues, or if there are actually support tickets that we might need to link to it. But more or less, very, very similar. Now, another thing, we might just want to look at all enhancements that are assigned to core. But I want to be a bit more granular. I might want to start to filter by the owner, by a tag, or by a stage. In fact, I only want to look at enhancements assigned within the capability that are in a prioritized stage. Okay, cool, there's none. Well, what about any that are in progress? All right, we have none. That means we have them somewhere else. And I can see that they are actually all in ideation, but if I go in and actually change this to a prioritized state, and now I get rid of ideation, we can see it's there. So it's a way for us to really have a look and understand. Now, as I said, everything cascades up. So if I go up a level to core and I start to view this, we're going to see a lot more information that's important. Here we can see an active sprint board, which I can open, and I can go into the sprint board if I am so inclined. I might be interested in that. But I can start to look at those tickets, support tickets, remember. They are already categorized in open, in progress, closed. So I can understand what is happening. I can already see here some SLAs that have been breached. First response and resolution. If I want a summary, I can hover over and I can understand, and I can just open it from this screen. Or I might just want to have a look at the Vista. Okay, so the list of things. And you'll notice that what we're looking at is a report where we already have a field filter of part core. So I'm looking at everything within that core part. If I go back to Trails, and I open core again, you'll also see the same for issues. Okay, open in progress. And you can also add an issue if you want. But that is sort of Trails, and that is what's powering our knowledge graph. When I say Trails, it is a knowledge graph. It is a way for us to assign different bits of data within different areas. If I do look at docs, you'll see PRD, design, other. So some really important bits of information can go in here that is feeding into the AI to help it understand your product better, which in turn can help deflect customer queries better. I'm going to take a quick pause when we're talking about Trails and the knowledge graph. Does anybody have any questions so far? Go for it, Greg. So Greg, yeah, great question. The fields that you do see, they're just the stock fields. But if we remember from last week, and for anyone who wasn't here in the session last Thursday, this will be nice for you. Within the settings, we can go down to object customization. And if we look at the capability or the feature, we can add our own custom fields. So we have some of those stock ones, but you can also create your own custom ones. Any other questions? Greg, we definitely tried to use the most commonly used. In saying that, there will be some that you might think are more important and should also be included. Excellent. So the next thing we're going to be looking at from a product point of view, like what are our product managers using and what views are they going to be interacting with the most? 1 second, I just need to change my screen share. There we go. Excellent, Latif. Hope this will definitely help you, and the videos, when they get shared, will also continue to help you. So when I'm putting my product manager hat on, and I know you can't see that at the moment, is what are some of the standard vistas that we might be using? And if we remember back to the terminology, a vista is simply a list. It's a list of objects, a list of support tickets, a list of developer tickets. Okay. How do we operate? And in a similar way to we've tried to think of some stock fields that might be used, we've also gone ahead and said, well, what stock lists might be important? And the first one I'm going to actually look at is the product assist tracker. And what we're looking at here is we're looking at all the different tickets within the Maple org, but specifically that are in 3 different stages. The first being awaiting product assist, awaiting development, or in development. Now, for both a manager of the product team, this is great for a holistic view on what is happening. But for a product manager themselves, someone in the product team that is working on these things, they can filter by the tickets that are assigned to them. And I believe in this org, I actually don't have anything assigned to me, but you can imagine now that I can go ahead and I can save this view. I can create a new view and say my product assist tracker. What that might look like if I change a few of these fields. Okay. I'm going to edit the owner for these 4 tickets, and I'm going to assign them to myself. Yes, I would like to confirm that. So we can see now that I'm the owner of all of these. And if I go ahead and click on assign to me, I can see that they are now in my product assist tracker, in which case I can go and I can save, just like we saw last week, my product assist tracker, and I can create that. And now from an agent's point of view, someone in the product team, they have a view that they can always click on and go and have a look. And you'll also notice over here, we can look at a chat view. Okay. So if I would prefer to look at it in a different view, a bit more similar to, I guess, an intercom, we can do that. And personally, I prefer it in a list view. That's just me personally, but we can definitely go and start to change the way we look at it. If we want to now group as well, we can do that. So in all of these views, you can see, I don't want to group by stage. Sorry, I want to group by owner in the case of a manager. And here we can start to really look at what are the different stages of tickets we have and which ones are assigned to the different owners. So that is the first stock view of tickets that we have. The second one that we believe is very useful is the accepted ticket tracker. Now, simply put, what this is, we look at the top, we have a little tooltip. The accepted tickets tracker groups by the part to track feature requests that have been taken into consideration. All right, so we're starting to now look at any tickets that are a feature request of subtype feature request. They're assigned to an enhancement. Remember, enhancement is an object for enhancing the platform. And obviously, this is going to be supported by feature requests from customers. So we can start to go and do that. Again, if I want to only look at assigned by to me, I can do that, in which case there's nothing in an accepted stage. But it is a way that I could do that. Similar to before, we can save this view. And I now have an area for me just to go and understand what is happening. And the final thing that I'm going to show, well, two things, team tickets. Okay, so now as tickets come in and they can be auto-routed into the team, we can look at unassigned versus assigned. And you'll notice we're looking at a group, and here we're looking at platform users and admins. I can change that to support agents if I want, or I can add support. But this is a way just to understand in my team, what is unassigned, what is assigned. If we have a system that is more pooled and people just come in and they say, I want to pick up this ticket. This is a great view, but maybe it is also one that just managers want to look at. And the final thing in terms of just base views is just a base view. What we're looking at here is tickets in these stages. And again, these are just the default stages. But if you customize the org and you have your own stages, they will also show here and you can filter by them. Now, what's important about this is I can go ahead and I can create my own views. I might want to look and I want to group it by stage. And now we're not just looking at those more granular views we were just looking at. We're just looking very holistically. And maybe I only want to be looking at a subtype of a feature request or an enhancement or a bug ticket, whatever subtypes you have created in the system. And now you'll see I've gone from 500 odd tickets to 267. Excellent. This is a lot more clear. And specifically, maybe I want to add a severity. And I only want to look at blocker and high tickets. We have a really nice way of just viewing this. I can save it. In fact, I might come in one day and say, you know what, this doesn't help. I want to group it by parts. Okay. So now I can see them by parts. And I want to customize my view because we'll notice there's not a lot of columns. And in this, I might want to actually add the stage. Oh, sorry, stage is there. I might want to add the severity. So I can scroll across and I can see it. And from there, I might want to also sort it by severity, in which case we're going from high to blocker. So from least important to most important, but I can also change that and do the opposite. Just as we saw, I can create a new view and I can save it. And this is great. This is one way for us to sort of understand what's happening. Greg, in the event an engineer reassigns and we hire a new one, can we reassign the tickets from person A to person B? 100%. So what you might have, what I showed before is we can see all of these are unassigned. I'm going to say this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. I want all of them to be assigned to me. Moving up to edit, I can change the owner. And I can change the owner to whoever it might be, changing it to myself. So we can do bulk changes. And then that updates and it will notify the new owner. While we're in this view, you'll also see that you can also change parts. Maybe they were incorrectly assigned. You can change severities. You can change stages all at once, as well as adding tags, changing tags. You can do all of that at bulk. Now, from a product manager's point of view, being able to slice and dice is important to be able to get to the questions that we need to answer. Okay. What are we hearing from customers that are feature requests? Which one should we be looking at? Maybe I want to filter by customers being tier 1 or tier 2. I can do that. But one thing that is very hard for us to do is to start to analyze patterns and to start to analyze trends. Now for this, I'm going to go back to the default tickets where we have that 572 tickets. And I'm going to go to the Thunderbolt. And we're going to see this button called Smart Cluster. I'm going to click on that. What the system has just done is using that knowledge graph that we looked at 10 minutes ago that we call trails. It's used all the information. It's used tickets that are in the system. It's used PRD documents. It's used knowledge base articles. It's used descriptions. It's used release notes. And it's gone through and said, hey, look, all of these tickets could be categorized into these 87 clusters. This top cluster has 48 tickets, and I can open that and we'll see some subclusters. Okay, here's a cluster of 11 tickets. Here's one of 16, 9, 7, 5, and that goes throughout all of them. We can scroll across and we can look at information. Average created date age. Average modified date. How many bugs were there? So how many of these are classified as a bug? And how many are classified as a feature request? Okay. And that's great. That helps me a lot. But I do want to be a bit more granular. And now I'm going to say, well, cool. Let's filter all of the tickets in those clusters just to feature requests. You'll see we just went from 87 clusters down to 12. And we don't have subclusters this time because already the data has been filtered to be a lot more narrow. And here, everything you've seen, we can create a new view, we can save it, so the system will just open it if we want that to happen. But how can we use this information? All right. If I open this, we can see a quick summary. Okay, that's great. Got all these 25 tickets in here. All right, well, let's go and have a look at them all. And what you'll notice is now we have very granular information on the trends that we've been seeing. If you wanted to apply a filter on created in the last 3 months, in the last quarter, you could also have done that in the prior screen. But now we've been very granular. Before I move on, from a product point of view, what questions might we have in regards to these vistas and trails and how they interact and how a product manager might use them? So, Greg, with that sample question, which of my subsystems are consuming the majority of our trouble tickets? It will depend a little on how you use field names and everything, maybe subtypes. But my immediate thought would be, if we come to tickets and we simply group it by parts, when you think of the parts as your subsystems. All right. Now, if we start to look at severity, the most troublesome tickets, in my opinion, would be high or blocker. Now, I've just applied those filters and I can understand where is this happening. But I might want to be more granular and I actually might want to start to filter by a subtype, and I want to look at bug tickets. All right, so I hope this answers your question, Greg, but that's how I would look at answering your question. Subsystems being the different parts, filtered by severity and subtype. Vish, how many levels of hierarchy is possible within tickets? Okay. So this will start to be something that we dive into more with our session on Thursday. But it is also something we looked at in that end-to-end last Thursday. And what I mean by that is, if we look, and I hope this is answering your question, Bish, correct me if I'm wrong. When I look within a ticket, we can assign it to different opportunities and issues and incidents. So in terms of hierarchy, you'll have one ticket. We don't have children tickets, but we do have children developer items. Is that what you're looking at, Vish? Excellent. And Vish, on Thursday, as we get into look at issues a lot more, you will see then there's levels of hierarchy there as well. Now, good news is, from our session last Thursday, we actually covered a lot. We covered a lot about the platform and how to interface. We've already touched on a lot of the different topics. So this session will be a little bit lighter for you, thankfully. I just want to make sure everyone's happy with what they've seen so far. There's no questions before I move on. Fantastic. I'm glad you think so, Greg. That was our aim. Definitely want to make people's lives a lot easier. Now, okay, so how is this smart clustering useful? I want to quickly get back to what we're looking at. I want to look at all feature requests. I want to do a smart cluster so I can identify the trends. I'm going to look at this one. Okay, so I'm currently looking at this. Now, what I'm going to look at is one, I just wanted to see if there was any links assigned with these. But also I might want to look at parts. I want to know what they're assigned to, because some of these tickets you'll see, like this one, is already assigned to a part, in which case I don't want to use it to create another enhancement. It is already categorized with one enhancement. All right, so I could also use the filter to eliminate any enhancements, but I can see here all the different parts that they're assigned to. Different colors represent different things. This light blue is a feature. This dark blue is a capability. Green is an enhancement. Now, as a product manager, I've read this summary and I've started to look at these separate tickets. Excellent. Well, they're not all the same. you know, AI has gotten us a really good start, but there's actually some that are a bit more related. And for demo purposes, I'm going to say these three are this one, this one. Okay, so I'm going through and I'm selectively choosing which ones I want. And that's great. What can we do with them? We could go ahead and we could change severities, we can change stages, but I can also see this create. When I press create, you can see enhancement. And what this does is, as you'd expect, it creates an enhancement. Now, I'm going to point something out because it's actually not noticeable the first time. This summary is specific to the 8 selected tickets. It is different to the summary of all 25. All right, and I can see a little bit about it. So I'm going to give it a name, improve data biz and sharing. Okay. I'm going to identify a part to assign it to, so that categorization. And let me see. I don't necessarily agree with these top options. Let me go down. And I might say in actually this case, assigning it to the base product is the best. There is no data analysis part, so I'm not going to assign it to that. But I'm going to assign it to Maple Software. Automatically, we have an owner because remember, parts have ownership. So we know who to talk to when things go right or when things go wrong. We can add a target close date, a start date if we want, and any other attributes that you might set up. From here, the tickets are already linked and we can assign developer items. So like your Jira tickets. You can assign PRD documents if they're already there. And if not, we can go ahead and we can click create. And what we have is one of those enhancement objects that we were talking about earlier. And I explained that an enhancement is actually very similar to a Jira Epic, but it's not the same. If we remember back to the trail, and I can actually see this one in a trail, I can hover over its name and I can open it in Trails. We can see that it is assigned to Maple Software. And in fact, maybe I disagree with that now, and I can go ahead, I could change that. And I might do that with parts. I want to say that it is actually a part of support ops. Cool. So this isn't something that you can do easily in Jira with epics. Okay. I want to go to capabilities and I'll go to support. Where is support? There. And now when I open it, I can see that enhancement. So we were able to move everything with it and assign it to a different category. So therefore it might be handled by a different team very quickly. And also as it goes through its life cycle, we see ideation, prioritize, deprioritize, and these different actions can be used to automate. What I mean by automate, simply changing the categorization to this support part will have notified any developers working on it in the correct teams. And the old team, hey, this has been moved. You don't need to continue working on this. For the new team, hey, this has just been moved to your team. Can you please pick it up? However you want that automation to run. In the same way though, as this stage goes from ideation to UX design to then in development, this can be used to notify. Or more importantly, if it's in UX design or in development and it moves to deprioritized, then that can trigger a notification. There's all these open issues, so developer items of work that are being worked on, but they don't need to continue working on it. So let's notify them, send a notification. This enhancement has just been deprioritized. You do not need to continue working on this item of work. And now if after a week they're still working on that, even though the enhancement is deprioritized, they can get notified and managers can get notified, hey, this person is still working on this item. And I'm actually going to jump into DevRev on DevRev very shortly to show you another thing that can be used to really help there. But the next thing that sort of differentiates this from an Epic, I'm going to skip straight to general availability. And we can see here, it calls in general availability and I get a notification. Would you like to promote it or would you like to merge it? Now, merge, as the verb suggests, will merge it into its parent part. Any of the tickets, the issues, the documentation, and the articles that were living within this enhancement will now live within the support part. So you're keeping that context for future interactions with customers. The other option is promote. Do you want to promote this to a feature, which would be a child of its parent part? And if you disagree again, you can move it. But now I'm going to promote it. And we can see this enhancement has been promoted to this. So it has no tickets assigned to it. It has no issues. Now that is assigned to the feature. 8 tickets. I can look at those customers. So these are the customers that had those tickets that were linked to the initial enhancement. If I close this, and now I change support and look at the features, we can see it. All of this is to say that the key differentiator, in the easiest way I can think of explaining, is a living, breathing object. It's not just forgotten about like an Epic once it's finished. If we promote it to a feature, we can continue assigning tickets to it. We can continue having developers work on it. I'm going to take a quick pause because that was a lot to take in terms of enhancement and how it differentiates to an Epic. What questions might we have in regards to what you've just seen? Well, I hope crickets means that I explained it in a way that everyone understood. If, as we continue, questions do arise, please don't hesitate to send them through. So having those enhancements is great, but how do we use this for prioritization? And for that, I will show you a little bit in this org, and then I am actually going to change to a new org, to DevRev on DevRev to show it with a little bit more information. So this is our roadmap. We categorize into now, next, later, and that can be different for everyone. Within DevRev, now is this quarter, next is next quarter, or enhancements that are prioritized, and later is anything that's just in ideation. So it might be 2 quarters away, it might be 3 quarters away. But if we look at some of these fields, there's some really interesting things we can see. First, we straight away understand who the owner is. We know what the stage is. We know which customers it's affecting. We know if there's an opportunity assigned, and we can start to see dollar values and customer impact. We can see what tickets are assigned to it and how many developer items. And as I said, I'm going to change screens now just so you can see what this looks like with some actual information. So now this quarter, next quarter, and later ideation. What this means is when it comes time for prioritization, product managers, engineering managers, support managers, whoever is involved in those discussions can sit down and have conversation with actual metrics. Remember, end users don't need to only be using DevRev. Opportunities can be living in Salesforce. Developer items can be living in Jira. Support tickets could be living in Salesforce or Zendesk. And DevRev could be bringing it all together. Ideally, we want everyone on the platform, but I just want you to remember that as we walk through. These customers that you're seeing, they are living within DevRev for us. We use DevRev entirely. We don't use a Jira. We don't use a Salesforce. But for potential end users, these customers could be getting pulled from Salesforce. The same as these opportunities. This top enhancement we can see has 13 opportunities assigned to it, and the next one has 5. Now, as we go across, we can start to look at, well, what's the potential revenue impact of working on something? And you'll notice it isn't just based on a dollar value. It isn't just based on opportunities. It isn't just based on number of customers, because this is a lower dollar value than this one. Okay. It is a formula. It's taking in a lot of things into account. It's taking in opportunities in their different stages: closed won, renewal, upsell. It might, or a prospect. It's looking at accounts. So customers, are they a tier 1? Are they a tier 2? It's also looking at tickets. How many tickets are assigned to it, and what are the severities of these tickets? Are they blockers? Are they high? And furthermore, it's starting to look at, well, how many developer items of work will it take? All of these things are going into a formula which will be able to be customized per end user to start to develop a customer impact score. And now that means from a metric point of view, we can go in and we can understand what should we be focusing on based on the voice of the customer. It would make no sense to prioritize, say, this enhancement that's only been asked by one person, one customer, as opposed to this one. But you might also say, no, I think we should be sorting by potential revenue, in which case, these are the ones we should be focusing on. There's no one way. You could be doing it on potential revenue, or you might be doing it on that impact. Now, where this system also becomes really powerful, we see the description. Okay. Actually, I'll go to one that's a bit closer to being finished. Visualization framework. We're working on improving that. Here's the description about it. A lot of information. We have some docs. Okay, so Figma might be a Notion page. And as this gets into the general availability, let's make a product manager's life easy. Similar to how Auto created an enhancement. I can generate release notes with AI. Product managers don't always enjoy writing, and I don't blame them. So let's make it easy for them. Let's use AI to analyze everything and give a draft. Product manager can then go, yeah, actually, I do agree with this. Or no, I don't. Okay, so a lot of information can be used by the PMs to improve their workflow. I can edit it, I can discard it, or I can save it. I'm going to discard. And for a product manager, and this also starts to get into engineering, but I'm going to show you today, is I'm going to press Ask Turing, or you could press Command J. And this pulls up a little bar down the bottom. And from here, I could say, who has worked on this part in the last month? So natural language query to the AI. I can see the parties visualization framework, which aligns here. This is the last month, so we've applied that date filter. And contribution type could be any of these activities from a code repository or code base such as GitHub. So we do integrate with GitHub. What this allows me to do from a product manager's point of view is say, okay, well, who do I need to talk to in regards to getting something done? I can see all the users. So Satyam, he's focused nearly 43% of his time on this enhancement across these different events. And he's contributed 67.4% to this part in the last 30 days. So development, he's actually done all the development activity on it. And that has actually impacted these 34 issues, these 27 support tickets, which has affected all of these customers. Straight away, I know who is working on the enhancement and who should I really direct my attention to when I need to get an answer. I'm going to take another quick pause. Any questions in relation to the roadmap, enhancements and the stages and what we're showing here? Looks like everyone is good. So we'll continue on. One of the next areas that we're going to start looking at in terms of product management and enhancements is a release tracker. And I'm going to go back to Maple and I will go for my release tracker, which I haven't pinned. Let me find it. Apparently I do have it pinned right there. Cool. And this is just a way for us and product managers to quickly get an understanding. We're looking at the last month. I'm actually just going to get rid of that. And we can look at all enhancements that got marked as general availability within the last month, showing information that we could see in the roadmap. When we go to limited availability, so this might be just for a small subset of clients. It's in beta testing. Again, we can see this one got marked for limited availability, a small subset. And then soon to be released, as the name suggests. It's within a certain target close date. We can see here, this is in the next month. So before December 12th, within this Maple org, this demo org, all of these enhancements in theory should be closed. We can see there hasn't been a lot of linking within this demo org because there's no dollar values. But if you imagine within DevRev on DevRev, there is going to be information here. And this isn't just great for the product managers to use, soon to be released to keep on top of tasks. This is a really nice area for support agents. Same as the roadmap. A support agent or even a salesperson might be interested in what is coming soon that might help me close this deal. What is coming soon that might help me support this customer? A lot of information which they can then open and they can understand what is happening. We see this is in testing, so it should be general availability soon. In terms of tickets and everything, this is a typical workflow from a manager or a product manager. And obviously this will then link into sprints and sprint boards. But I aim to show that to you on Thursday when we do a deeper dive into the build aspect and how might engineers be using our platform. Because in the end, it's the engineers who are really going to be using sprints We do have a nice little differentiator there, which I believe some of the people within this session were effortless and may have already seen it. I do remember demoing it. But let's leave that for Thursday, and we'll talk holistically in regards to engineers. Final thing I want to show you today, and I'm going to ask, set Q&A. Greg, how to do sprint planning? We can definitely talk about that. If that's what you'd be interested in, I think you'll find that it is fairly similar to a lot of platforms, and there'll also be different processes that different companies, different customers might use, but we can definitely look at it at a high level. Excellent. I will make a note of that, Greg. Now, we don't have much longer, actually. So if you can hold for another 15, 20 minutes, then we should be done for the session. But I will ask if you want to raise a hand, who would like a quick 5-10 minute break? Or who would like to power through? Hands up for a quick break. Excellent. I love it. Looks like we're going to power through. Final thing that I want to show you, and we did touch on this last Thursday, is sessions. So if you remember from a support agent's point of view, it's great to look at a session recording to sort of get that end-to-end understanding of what was the customer doing when they had an issue. But from a product's point of view, that's going to have a different set of importance. So you'll see we have some stock views, one being sessions. And within sessions, we can create a date, we can add different filters. Okay, so we can really narrow it down. At the moment, there's nothing, but that's because I'm on Android. If I go to iOS, well, in this org, we have nothing. But when I go to web, we're going to start to see those sessions. As I said, you might want to go ahead and look at OS. And I only want to look at Mac OS. Perfect. We have that. We can now start to see browsers. And if you want to drill down, you really can. I might just want to be looking at certain exceptions. But we don't want to make product managers do that. They don't need to go ahead and apply all these filters all the time. In fact, they could just go to observability web sessions. And from here, it's one of those stock dashboards. We separate it into web, networks, and events. Within each of these, we're going to see different information. What is the platform distribution? What is the OS distribution? And what is the browser distribution? We can see some people are using Microsoft Edge, a very, very small percentage, but 95% of the users on Maple, 717 to be precise, in the last 30 days were from Chrome. And as we go down, like, which of the URLs within an app have the highest response times? That could be an issue, and I can start to now, dive into these things a lot more as a product manager. Why is this having the highest load time? I can click on it and I can start to look. Here's all the users in the last 30 days that were on this. And we can start to maybe filter by the page load time. All right, so load time in milliseconds, and I want to filter that not in descending. Cool. Well, we can see that both of these had a really big loading time from Linux. And in fact, most of the Linux has quite a high load time in comparison to some of the other browsers. Like Chrome is 7,000 milliseconds, whereas this one up here is 37. That might be an area that from the product team, we want to improve the usability of this URL on a Linux system. Cool, we can go ahead and start planning. What about URLs with dead clicks, where users are just clicking and not getting any response? Or rage clicks, sort of correlated a bit to a dead click, because when one click doesn't work, the natural response is to rage click and hope something happens. So both of these views you can also click and really narrow down on what's happening. Excellent. Great tab to really understand. All right, but what if we look at networks? Where were the slowest APIs? Cool. Well, these APIs had the slowest response times. Why was that? What can we do to improve that? If we go in, we actually get a very nice image, a text file, all right? But also, here are the sessions. What can we gather from this? What analytics can we draw? Okay, why were they the slowest? Erroring APIs, most popular APIs. So as you can see, all of these with the drill down ability to be able to look into them really allows the product team to start to map out the usage within the platform. Are users using it the way they thought, the way it was designed and the way it was intended? Greg, great point. As we go to events, again, custom events, website loaded, all of these you can drill down into. And the pitch sort of keeps going. What insights can be drawn from this to improve the product? So let's be real, that's what the product team wants to do. They want to improve the platform. So if we can give that visibility, which remember, we can, because I can actually play that session recording. I can see what the user was doing, what Emma Gates was doing today or yesterday at 7 a.m. You know, what were the details? What was she using? She was actually in India. I'm not too sure why. And she was using a Mac, which I'm sure Bill is not happy about, that she's using a Mac and not a Windows computer. But remember, we can really drill down and understand why are these things happening. Which leads into the final thing. Product managers design a platform. They expect end users to use it a specific way. And the best analogy I have for this is you have a beautiful park and a footpath that goes around it, but the footpath is longer. So you end up getting a dirt path cutting straight through the grass. The reason being it's faster. And humans can be a bit lazy. We just want to get from point A to B as fast as possible. Same in and out. For that, we can set up journeys or what we call funnels. Again, we're looking at the last 30 days. We can look at it through Android. We can look at it through iOS. We can look at it through web. And we can create funnels. We can look at funnels. So if I look at getting started, we have 3 different pages. Website loaded, fixed section, getting started. You can see we had 100 people get onto this page, and that was 193 sessions were counted. But from there, it drops down to 46. It's not very good. From there, we go from 46 users to 26. So a drop of 20 people. Even smaller conversion rate. And we can look at drop-off analytics. So there was 147 drop-off sessions. There was 5 rages. This is how many API calls were made, average response time. And I can click on this and I can go into it and I can start to see those session recordings. Okay, I can go next. So I can really start to understand why was that happening. But we also have funnel insights, where it is a stock dashboard. We can start to look at efforts taken. If we're ever unsure of something, we can hover over the icon and get a better understanding. But like, how many high outliers were there? How many low outliers? How many exceptions? What is the API overview? What is the top 10 response status codes? Obviously, if we're seeing 400 and 500s here, that could be a very, very big issue. At least we're in the 200 range. Then we can look at day-wise conversion. So as we start to look at this journey, are we finding on the weekend there's lower conversion rates, or are we finding on the weekdays there's lower conversion rates? All of this information to a product manager is super useful. Super useful to understand that the product is being used how it's designed, or actually a new feature was just released and it's not working how intended. We go back to 30 days and we can see seeking support. So in Maple, of the people who tried to get help, this is the sort of drop-off. The funnel being seeking support, I would guess they're trying to get to a support agent. Well, why is there such a big drop-off? Have we made it too hard for someone to create? Is there too many clicks to get to the end of starting a conversation? And all of these funnels you can create. Step one, if I want to add a step, you can add as many steps. And then you can choose your different funnel steps. Let's enable the team to understand what the end users are doing, how they're doing it. Is the product being used the way it was designed? I'll take a quick pause, and this actually does take us to the end of a typical use case of how PMs might use DevRev. What questions might we have in what we've just seen, as it relates to observability and session recording? Excellent. Is there any topics that I covered today that anyone would like me to touch back on before we end the session? So Greg, in terms of a training program, you can look up DevRevU for DevRev University, and we are starting to have online training. In terms of a sandbox, you can sign up for a free account to play with, but I'm going to let Shiv handle that, and it's probably best to continue that conversation with Shiv in the future.
Yes, of course, Greg. We can, go ahead and create one sandbox environment to play around with. We'll also be sharing this recording for more detailed learning. So we'll be sharing all the recordings of all the past sessions and the future ones. Yep. Thanks a lot, Jay. It was an insightful session. I think you covered most of the product aspects and the observability. And let us know what are you going to cover in the coming Thursday, so that people are prepared, so that they can expect what's coming in.
Yeah, 100%. So session 4 is sort of going to round out this session on Thursday, where we're going to start looking at developers. So how is DevRev used for developers? Looking at issues, issue vistas, how we differentiate ourselves, sprint boards, and developer 360 dashboards. How can we use DevRev to really understand what developers are working on? Are they focused in the right areas?
All right. Thank you, Jay. Have a nice day, everyone. Thanks for joining. Thanks for your questions.
Thank you
Happy
for
to
joining, guys.